Hello everyone and welcome back to Project Next. I'm Finn Blake and I'm bringing to light success stories to empower the next generation. Today's episode 4 and I'm incredibly excited to be talking to Matt Moran. Matt has had a long and illustrious career in all things food and media, but he was not without his early challenges. So hear the MasterChef explain his meteoric rise in the cooking industry. There are plenty nuggets of gold along the way for budding entrepreneurs, business people and foodies. If you've been here before, you know where the like button is. And if you haven't, then make yourself familiar with the subscribe button below. I'm really looking forward to this one, so let's get into it. All right, well, Matt Moran, thank you so much for joining me on Project Next. It's a very big pleasure to have you on. I'm very much looking forward to this conversation because, the traditional path is to come in and be in your suit and be all corporated up. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing the story, and thank you so much for joining me.
Pleasure, buddy. I remember when I was a young kid, thinking, God, I'd hate to have to wear a suit every day to work. And thank God the chefs don't have to wear suits. Because, I probably wouldn't be a chef if I had to wear a suit every day. Not that I don't ever, I go to weddings every now and then, and occasionally, in a corporate thing, I'll wear a suit, but all the races, but it doesn't happen very often.
What about the fashion choices in general? Have you got a certain way that you like to dress, or is it just whatever goes on in the day?
Look, growing up with not a big fashion sense, I think I was in the top 10 buyers of Tom Ford in Australia at one point, so I don't mind Tom Ford.
Very good to hear. So, Matt, I do want to jump straight back at the start of the journey. Can you tell me a little bit more about what it was like to grow up on a farm, and particularly in regional New South Wales?
Look, it's a great upbringing because it's a sense of freedom. You can explore, and but it's a little bit, if you're by yourself, it's quite solitary. But it's a great upbringing. I really enjoyed it.
So tell me about what it was like to live on the farm, because you would have had to have found things to do to take up your time. As you said, you were very isolated from all your mates and everyone else. So what was taking the time up while you were living on the farm?
Well, look, there was always chores, and this is something that frustrates me with the younger generation sometimes. There was always something that you had to do. It's not as though that, you just lazed around with a video game in your hand. The minute you got home from school, you were actually out doing stuff. You weren't, I probably should have been doing homework, to be honest, but I never did. So it was always a little bit of an adventure. We had ponies, we had horses, we had mini bikes. So there was always something to do, and it was always a little bit of fun. But you did it on your own. You didn't really have friends come over.
You didn't make it all the way through school. Can you tell me a little bit about that and what drove your decision to leave school at 15?
Yeah. Look, I was always very sporty. So I played a lot of sport growing up, which I loved. I went to a school that wasn't a great school. It was a public school. It was because we moved off the farms when we were quite young. And we had a dairy farm, and unfortunately that went, and there wasn't a lot of money. And, I don't have a great sense of concentration and never really have. Put it down to whatever you want to diagnose it as, which is probably a good thing because I get a lot done every day. So I wasn't that academic. I was very good at numbers, and I still am very good at numbers, which obviously helps in business. And to be really honest, I did a little bit of work experience as a baker and a little bit of butchery, and kids in Blacktown didn't really become cooks or chefs, or whatever you want to call them. I had a sense that it was all right, but I wasn't in love with it. I don't have a beautiful romantic story of having parents that are phenomenal cooks or grandparents, but I wanted to leave school. I didn't like school. I really, I didn't. I was the youngest in my year out of 200 students. I was always the youngest, growing up, but I was a pretty big guy. Sport sort of helped, so I never repeated. So that probably would have put me behind too. And I suppose confidence was obviously lacking then too, if you weren't doing well at school, and just really wanted to leave. So I would have done anything, Finn, to leave school, whether it was an apprenticeship, a motor mechanic or painter or whatever it is. But for some reason, I decided that it may be a chef. And I was working part-time on weekends in an RSL club. I went for about 20 different interviews when I was 15. I was still at school. My father wouldn't let me leave unless I had an apprenticeship, but I was able to leave at the end of year 10. So I did a couple of months, the following year, going back into year 11. And I couldn't get a job. It's quite funny now. People laugh about it. Chefs wouldn't give Matt Moran a job as a cook. And I remember one guy even saying to me, if the first 10 guys don't work out, I'll give you a call. And, I was really disheartened by it. And it was just, very hard. I was only 15 at the time. And I went to this place that I didn't really want to go to because it was so far away. It was about an hour and a half from where we lived by public transport. And it was on the North Shore. And I went in there and I remember seeing a heap of names on a piece of paper. And all the names had crosses next to them. And I thought, well, this is my chance, to bluff something. And I said to the guy who was the chef and the owner, which didn't happen a lot back in those days. The restaurant owners would tend to be businessmen, people laundering money, and the chefs were the dirty, smelly guys out the back that no one really cared about. And I was just desperate. And I just said to the guy, I said, look, I don't have a lot of experience, but I can promise you one thing, I can work hard. I've got a really good work ethic. And if you give me a chance, I promise you, I won't let you down. And because I said that, he told me to, come in and do a 3-day trial. I don't think I did that well in that trial, but he told me on the Monday, he said, you can leave school and you've got an apprenticeship. And little did I know that was one of the best restaurants in the country. It was very, very French, very fine dining. And I remember my father used to come and pick me up every night, because he was worried that if I didn't go through with this and pulled out, I'd already left school and I wouldn't be able to get another job. So he used to pick me up every night. He used to drive an hour to come and pick me up in Roseville and drive me back to Blacktown, because we worked 6 days back in those days. And a kid from Blacktown being 15 to working in a restaurant that is fine dining, and we would do a minimum of 80 hours a week. My first paycheck was about $150. So you work that out. It's about $2 an hour. And because I'm a little bit of, compulsive, obsessive and whatever, I just wanted to excel. And, I knew that I was doing all right in the first year because everyone else around me was always getting bollocking, and I never was. So I was the golden child, I suppose. And I'd come in, a couple of hours early every day when I could, and I'd try and learn something more, try to do pastry and try to learn how to pipe properly. And I became obsessed by it. In fact, I was there for 4.5 years. And I pretty much lost my teenage years to just working incredibly hard and trying to learn as much as I possibly could.
At what point do you think it sort of set into your mind that you were like, okay, I can actually make a go of this. This is going to be what I do?
Look, to be honest, it was in the first week of being there. I realized that this is like, wow, I've never seen food like this, and I've just, what they got out of the fridge in the cool room and then they put it on the plate looks so beautiful. So it opened my eyes in so many different ways. I really enjoyed the pastry side of it, and hence that's why I started doing TV and judging, Great Australian Bake Off and things like that, is because I've got a real pastry background.
During that time where you were going through and you were an apprentice and you were, very green, who were your biggest mentors at that time, and how much impact did they have on your acceleration in terms of ability?
My head chef at the time, who was also the owner, a guy called Michael DeLawrence, who I'm still very close with. He was classically trained and worked in Europe, and there was a couple of sous chefs when I was really, really early. A woman called Kathy Liley, who was a Kiwi girl. She ended up marrying a Dutchman and moving to Europe. She was a massive influence. She taught me a lot. She was really tough on me, You'd be standing for some days 16 hours and you'd be leaning on one leg, and she'd come up behind you and kick the leg that's straight and tell you to stand on both legs because it's bad for your posture. So she was a real bitch, and I hated her. And I'd go in there and try and learn as much as I possibly could off her. And then when she left, she actually went and worked for Kerry Packer as a private personal chef, and she did catering on the side. And I remember after, it might have been 6 months after she left, she actually rang me and said, Matt, can you come and help me, do some catering gigs? So, and I thought to myself, geez, she was such a bitch to me that whole time that I worked with her, but she obviously thought that I was all right because, she ended up asking me, to come and work with her. So, we became great mates, of course.
What were you taking out of your mentors at that time, and what were the particular lessons that you found really important to shaping who you are today?
Look, I learned from these mentors how to work hard, discipline, and you get nothing in life unless you work for it. It's and these guys always used to say to me, because they went off and did their own restaurants, they did their own catering, and it was always, you've got to work really bloody hard to get where you want, especially in that industry, because it was really competitive. Chefs started buying restaurants, is where previously it was businessmen, and chefs started to become a lot more popular than what they were. The reason being is, if you were a big player and you wanted to go to a nice restaurant and you wanted the nice table, you wanted to know the owner of the restaurant, hence the business guys. And we were, I mentioned it before, we were the smelly, dirty guys out the back that no one cared about. But then when the restaurants started being owned by the chefs, everyone wanted to know the chefs because they wanted, the nice table, and hence why I probably know so many people. I can walk into into a government and know pretty much every politician, or most of the music guys or actors or whatever it is. I meet them over the years because they come to the restaurants and they want to know you because they want the nicest table.
Fair enough. And so in terms of where you were as a chef at that time, where were you drawing your inspiration from in terms of the food you were cooking?
LaBelle taught me how to cook, and Manfredi taught me about produce. And then, I met a guy that I worked with for many years at LaBelle, Peter Sullivan, who was about 5 years older than me. And I was 22, and, I'd been offered a job by a guy called Tetsuya. And I thought, geez, I want to go out and do my own thing. And then Pete and I started looking. So that's when I bought Paddington in, and I was 22. Very young, very green.
I was going to say, so that was 1991 that you
That was
started up the
91.
first restaurant. So tell me about the emotions at that time, because you were obviously 22. That's very young to be taking on your own project. What were the emotions like at that time, and was it something pretty scary for you?
Yeah, it was really scary because it was our own money. I knew how to run a kitchen, and Peter knew how to run the front of house, but we had no idea about the business side of it. So I even remember after the first year, we nearly went broke a couple of times because, we just didn't know how to manage our costs. And I think the most important lesson I learned was to actually surround yourself with people that know more about business and running a place than you do. Then it was all about, that was my second sort of lot of education for the next sort of 10 years, was learning how to run a business properly.
So Matt, tell me about the decision-making process when you were coming up with this first restaurant that you were going to open. Was it you woke up one morning and you were like, yep, I'm going to open a restaurant, or was it a little bit more considered?
It was a little bit more considered, and it's a big thing for a 22-year-old, with a partner who was a great mate. He was 27, to go out and actually fund it and do it. Land of opportunity. We were both very cocky, and we both thought that we could do good food and do good service. The business side of it, we had no idea. I used to think to myself that if it doesn't work, I'm young enough to go back. I could get a job anywhere because I was already had a profile, and I could go and get a job anywhere and get myself back out of it. But at a young age, let's have a crack, and why not, and see what happens. And I was lucky. We succeeded.
Do you think that sort of legitimized your career, or do you think the little ones beforehand were kind of giving you the confidence to be able to know, yep, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life?
Yeah, I think there's the real big turning points were, Paddington Inn in the beginning, Moran's, because Moran's was a serious restaurant, Two Hats and whatever else. Aria was a big, turning point because it was, it was the best location in Australia, I still think. Opera Bar, and which is a massive business. It's probably the biggest single bar in Australia. Chiswick for what I believe in. The whole paddock to plate was a big turning point. Barangaroo, which is one of the biggest investments I've ever made, because we've got 3 places in one big building there, Barangaroo House. And look, there's been turning points all the way through, and people keep asking me what's next, and I keep saying I don't know, because I'm still young enough, to still keep going and having a bit of fun.
The pub near
I want to
home,
have fun a lot
next.
more these days than be serious.
Yeah.
If you asked me 5 years ago, I would have told you that I want another 20 restaurants. Now probably not so many. I want to make the ones that I've got work and work really well. And I want to have a little bit of fun in life, hence why I bought the country pub, and I want to do accommodation, something that I haven't done before. And I love baking bread, and I love baking, and I've always wanted to own a bakery, so I'm going to build my own bakery. The town needs a general store, so I want to give it a general store. And the town is very quiet. There's nothing there. There's only one pub. There's not even a service station. I want to bring that town back to life, and I'd love to look back in 20 years and go, you know what, I made that town. So it's about giving back a little bit these days too.
Do you think that came as a result of COVID, do you think, or was it coming back into your mind a little bit earlier?
Yeah, it's always been in my mind, man. Yep. I'm very, very blessed in life. I'm very lucky. I've been able to do something that I love for 35 years, and the industry's been really good to me. I've been very successful in it. And there comes a point in your life, I think, where you look back and think, you know what, I wouldn't mind giving back to anyone, someone, anyone, the industry, and that's where my mind is at the moment. Don't get me wrong, I still love the business side, and I still want to make money, and I still open more businesses, there's no question. But at the same time, I'd like to give back as much as I possibly can.
What do you think that's sort of come from? I know that you spoke about the feeling that you were lucky and that the industry had given you so much, but was there a particular morning that you woke up and went, all right, I want to become a little bit more philanthropic in what I do? Or was it always something that you were pretty passionate about?
Look, I know my family had some real hardship on the land and farming. I'm part of a foundation which is Thankful for Farmers, which I help start. It's all about helping the farming community as much as we can, and raising monies and whatever else. That part of me is because I remember growing up and seeing some family doing it pretty tough. Look, I think I've always had a little bit in my veins, of helping other people. I was very lucky. A lot of people helped me when I was very young. I've had some great mentors, some great partners over the years. And it's I think part of being a good human is trying to help people.
For sure. And so I want to change tack a little bit and talk about your media career, because that has been very profound, if you like. And I remember sitting in the lounge room with my family growing up and watching MasterChef, and when you walked in the room, I still remember the feeling of going, all right, this bloke means business. We are not mucking around now. This show is becoming serious now, no laughing. Was that something that you sort of worked on, or was it something that you found the producers were pushing?
Look, the first TV show I ever did, I think I've done about 12 overall, in my career. The first one was a documentary called Heat in the Kitchen, and there was my restaurant rules. And I remember auditioning for it, and I didn't really want to, but the girl that was doing some media for me, convinced me to do it. And it was a concept of, 2 people in each state, and the winner gets given a restaurant that have never actually owned a restaurant before. And I was like, this is a fucking stupid show. It's never going to last, And they're like, why? And I said, because you're giving 2 idiots a restaurant that have never run a restaurant before. I know how hard it is. And I think because of that, because I was so honest and so blunt, that's one of the reasons why I got it. One of my best mates, it has been for nearly 30 years, is Gordon Ramsay. And Gordon and I have been mates. In fact, I even did one of Gordon's shows called The F Word when I was, I can't remember. It was one of Gordon's shows that they brought out, and I was the host for it. And, I remember watching Boiling Point, when I first met Gordon, when he was at Aubergine, and seeing how raw it was. And I remember when I first met him, we were talking about it. I hadn't really done TV, and he hadn't really done much of it at all, but Boiling Point was about to come out. And I just thought, you know what, if I ever do TV, I've just got to be myself. I don't want to be produced. I don't want to be told what to do. I just want to be myself. And if I feel as though I need to criticize something, I will criticize. And that's always been my philosophy on TV.
Yeah.
One thing, Finn, is that I have a restaurant empire that, makes me money, and that's what I love the most. And TV has always been a byproduct. Don't get me wrong, it actually has helped the restaurants and being busy, and I quite enjoy it. Certain shows more than others, but it's always been a byproduct. So I haven't relied on it like some people have, and which has probably helped me, because when they come along and say, Matt, would you like to do a TV show? I'll be brutally honest. I won't do it just for the cash, And
Do you kind of enjoy the theatre of it as well?
Yeah, look, I do, in certain parts of it. I've just been asked to do another. I don't think it's public yet, and probably you might get the scoop on this, but I'm going back and doing
nice.
another Bake Off series.
Oh,
with
great.
Maggie Beer this year, and I've got two other projects that I'm working on, two other TV shows that I'm working on also, and I've got my YouTube channel thing that I do now with, I have guests that come on. I enjoy that part of it because I like interviewing people and talking about their journey and what they cook. Kitchen tales. But yeah, TV's always been a byproduct. And if someone told me that my TV career is over tomorrow, so be it. I just go back to what I do the most. If someone told me that my restaurant and chefing career is over tomorrow, I'd be absolutely devastated. So that kind of sums up exactly how I feel about it.
Matt, do you think it's pretty important for chefs coming through now to incorporate a little bit of media into their own brands? And do you think it's very different from when you were coming through?
Mate, that's a very good question. Look, I think it was very different when I came through. There was no such thing as a celebrity chef or a chef on TV. And, I was lucky around that generation is where it was happening and it was exploding. But I think nowadays you have to have some sort of media presence because it brings in people. And, I won't deny that. When I'm on TV, the restaurants get busier. And, after I finish this today, I've got a Zoom cooking class with 30 corporates. COVID still, everyone's a little bit hesitant. And I probably did about 25 of those during COVID, is where people know me as a chef and also as a media personality. So then they want you to cook. So that you make money out of that also. And obviously your brand, you can see cookbooks behind me. I've in the room, I've got boxes of them. So, it helps every little bit. You start to get a profile, then you get asked to do endorsements, you get asked to do cooking shows, you get asked to do stage shows, you get asked to do whatever it is, come on TV. And it helps generate revenue.
For sure. And so what has been the best or your favorite moment in terms of media appearances? Like what sticks in your mind as the one interview or appearance or challenge on MasterChef or Bake Off? What's the one that sticks out?
I'll tell you, here's a good one for you. So I was doing junior MasterChef, I think. There was about, half a dozen chefs and they were allowed to bring their kids on. And I bought Harry, and Harry, was a tiny little tot. And I think George or Matt asked Harry, so do you like your father's cooking? And Harry, of course, loves my cooking, but he was a bit shy and he didn't know what to say, and he said no. And I'm like, Harry, what are you talking about? And he kind of apologized afterwards. He probably won't remember it, but it was a moment in TV that a couple of million people were watching, and they've asked my son whether he enjoys my food, and he said no. It was something around that. They asked him about my food or who was the better cook, mum or I can't remember. It was something like that, but it was quite embarrassing for me, and poor old Harry just felt so bad afterwards because he didn't really mean to say it. It was just put on a spot, and there's cameras everywhere and there's a lot of people around there, and that's probably the last time he's been on TV or I've asked him to actually ever do anything in the media with me. You're probably well aware that I'm very protective of my family and I'm very private, so there's no photos of my son or my daughter on social media, and I sort of kept them out of it.
And so in terms of your craft, individually. How have you seen the evolution of that from day one when you were the kitchen hand at the RSL? Tell me about the journey that your food production has gone through.
Oh, look, I've gone from, learning to then mentoring myself and teaching people and food to me has got a lot simpler. Technique you obviously still need, but to me, it's all about the produce that you're using. And that's, I even made a TV show out of it called Paddock to Plate, promoting and highlighting the producer, because I think that they're undervalued in this country. There's no question. Simplicity is not a bad thing, and if you can take some ingredients off a plate, I think that it's probably better. I think a lot of restaurateurs and chefs are guilty of putting way too much stuff on a plate and then confusing it. I'll be honest with you, I've got chefs that work for me now that are far better cooks than I ever was. I love cooking. I cook a lot at home, but I'm not cooking in the restaurants. I'm sticking my fingers in things and I'm looking at it, and I'm, in nearly every restaurant that I own, we have food tastings and I have a say in what goes on the menu, and I comment on it, and I always write reports on what I'm eating and try to help the chefs. And it's a collective. It's not a dictatorship. So we all have a bit of a say. But anyone that sees my Instagram and looks at my Instagram, Chef Matt Moran, they know that I'm always cooking. In fact, I'm meant to be doing the Good Food Wine Show this weekend, but it's got cancelled because of COVID. So my first reaction was, great. I've got nothing on Saturday. I'm going to spend 4 or 5 hours in the kitchen and make a beautiful French cassoulet, which is a bit of a favourite in our house because it lasts for a few days. So if you see young Harry today telling that I'm making a cassoulet on Saturday, he'll probably invite a few of his mates around.
Yeah, I'll be up there for sure. I'll jump on the plane for that. But so Matt, I was going to ask you as well. You've touched on COVID a couple of times. That would have been a massive curveball for you, as much of the industry would have experienced that. Tell me about the challenges that you would have faced throughout last year and this year as well.
Look, we're going through a little bit of a spike at the moment, so restaurants are very quiet. Look, when COVID first hit, it was absolutely devastating. We're a big company, but we were lucky. We were in a pretty good position, but it was bloody scary. I didn't know what was going to happen. First of all, we looked after our staff. JobKeeper came in, which helped. We started doing a little bit of takeaway in some restaurants, and then we started reopening. And because we had some benefits of rents and government assistance and whatever, it looked really good. And then Christmas time happened, and it was devastating. We lost all our sort of week before Christmas all the way up into probably mid-January trade. New Year's Eve is one of our biggest revenue day. That was an absolute disaster. And then we kicked on again and we came back a bit, and then we had another little scare. And the minute we get scares, the media blow it up and people stop going to restaurants. I suppose it's understandable. No one wants to get it. I think we need this vaccine to be rolled out as soon as we bloody can, because we're experiencing a spike in Sydney. There's only 20 cases, I think, at the moment, but that really affects it.
So, Matt, what trends do you sort of see emerging from this whole saga and debacle? I don't know if they would have come as a result of COVID, but where do you see the next trends emerging in the food industry?
Look, restaurants are a lot more, as I said, a lot more agile, and they're streamlining a lot more. As for trends, I wish I could predict all those ones, because it made me man. It's hard to say. I think it's labor is expensive in restaurants, I don't think we'll end up seeing like real classical fine dining as much in Australia as probably what we had. There is definitely a trend for more plant-based foods, and less protein. And that also helps your cost as a businessman, because protein is expensive. But that is a trend. It's not really a trend. I think it's here to stay. People want to eat a lot more plant-based and don't want to eat massive big steaks anymore. It's not about the protein. It used to be the protein with a tiny little bit of garnish on the side, and now it's about the protein and how much vegetables you put on the side. Yeah, and that's the protein's gone from 300 grams to 150 grams, and then a lot more garnish in plant-based foods.
Yeah. And so, what would the advice be for other chefs, restaurateurs, media professionals coming through? But that's probably three separate questions, actually.
It is.
What would
Look,
it be?
do it because you love it. Make sure you're passionate about it because it's too bloody hard, and learn the trade before you actually go and open something, because it's you can lose a lot of money very bloody quickly. I see people all the time, ex-footballers that I'm mates with, that I've met over the years, and they say, Matt, when I retire, I'm going to open a restaurant or a cafe. And, I'm sure they're thinking, God, if you can do it, anyone can do it. But, the difference is when their chef walks out and, they're in the shit, I can jump in the kitchen.
True. That is true. And so, reflecting upon this amazing journey, Matt, what do you think are some of the proudest moments that you've had?
Look, it might be what I wanted, but I never envisaged any of it.
Yeah.
I suppose owning your first restaurant, and we're talking professionally, of course.
Yep.
Having kids is probably my biggest sort of, claim to fame,
Mm-hmm.
and having good kids. But, I think owning my first restaurant, getting that first award, that first chef's hat, that was a big thing. I was one of the youngest ever to get one. I think I was only 23 at the time. And, having great people around me and having success, not just shared with me, but with, other people. Peter Sullivan, my first partner, who's pretty much retired now. Bruce Solomon's been a great mentor, and a great partner. He's sort of retiring a little bit more now too. But there's another younger generation, Bruce's son, Elliot, who is a partner in some businesses with me. It's great to have that younger generation coming through.
And so, on the flip side of that coin, I think one of the biggest things that I've believed in coming through is that you don't have wins and losses. You have a win or you have a learn.
That's very wise, Finn. That's very wise.
Thank you. But the question is, what do you think your biggest learn would be then? Because you've had your biggest win as being the restaurant and coming through and enjoying a fascinating career. But what do you think the biggest learn was?
Look, there's no question. The biggest one was when we first opened Paddington Inn. We had no idea about the business side of it, and we realised that we needed someone to come in and help. And I think the next biggest one was there was a time there when we were overcommitting and expanding at a rate that we probably shouldn't have, and that hurt a little bit, because there was a couple of businesses that I got involved in that, from something that always worked and always made money to all of a sudden having one that didn't and it failed, and one, it brings you back to earth pretty quickly, so don't overcommit, and don't grow that quick that you lose control of it. Stay humble, and generosity is a good thing.
I think that's a massive thing, especially for entrepreneurship and that particular industry, because so much emphasis is placed on scaling and coming through and making things as big as possible. Do you think that doesn't really translate in terms of food?
Yeah, look, I think you've got to get it right, and by expanding too quickly and taking on too much, without having the right people, with you too, it's a mistake. I think the last couple of years for our company, it's been consolidation, and making sure that the restaurants that we've got are better than what they were the year before and more profitable. It's very hard in a COVID year, but that's what we still want to do. I'm expanding a little bit now again, with opportunities that I probably wouldn't have had coming out of COVID. And I think the ambition is gone from owning 50 restaurants to 100 restaurants is now gone in my life. I just want to I want to have a bit of fun. I want to I want to spend more time with with my kids and make sure that they do the right thing.
What does that fun look like?
Oh, mate, if Harry's told you anything about me, I'm a guy that has a lot of fun. The year before COVID, it was my 50th year, and And I went to Monaco with Mick Doohan, who's an ex-motorcycle rider, for 3 days and had a bit of fun. And then I went to London, and Gordon hired Brands Hatch for the day, and we raced cars. And then we flew up in a private jet to Iceland, and Gordon and I went fishing for 4 days. And mate, I know how to have fun. And I love my motorbikes, and I always do. And Harry knows I've got a bit of a collection. So I'd love to get out in the country and go for rides, and I love to travel. The farm, I'm going to spend more time there. And yeah, I'm a fun guy. I used to tell Harry that when he used to think I was a nerd. When he's about 15, he's like, "Don't touch me, Dad. Keep away from me." Okay, mate, you don't get it. Look at your other mates' dads. I'm cool. I've got tattoos and I ride motorbikes. He's like, "No, you're not. Don't touch me." Probably embarrassed the shit out of him now, but bad luck.
That's awesome. Matt Moran, thank you so much for joining me on Project Next. It's been an absolute pleasure to hear how you've gone from I suppose it's kind of an analogy for paddock to plate, your story. So thank you so much for joining me, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
Pleasure, buddy. I'll look forward to seeing you in Sydney for that Castellet one day.